Hey, welcome. Today's video is on the United States Constitution, the government of our country, and in my opinion, one of the greatest governments ever created. A remarkable government. Today we're going to talk about the beginning. We're going to intro it. How did we get the Constitution? How was it created? How was it formed? In future lessons we'll talk about how it works, but for now we're going to talk about where did it come from. So, first of all, we didn't always have the U.S. Constitution, obviously. Our first government was the British government. We were just colonies, the 13 colonies. And we had the British government, okay?
The British government liked to bully people around and take money. Where's the $4? Taxes, baby, taxes.
Gosh, first the Navigation Act.
Let's count these. 1, 2, 3. I want more. I need more money.
The Sugar Act and the Townshend Act.
Yes, and there's going to be more. Don't get... Yes, all right, Blake Croikey. That might be Australia, but it doesn't matter. Where's more money?
That's all I've got.
Right,
Believe me dry. You can see that the problem with the British government is that it was too strong. It was telling the colonists what to do. They didn't have any participation in it. They didn't have any representation. You had a monarch, a parliament that didn't representing, making up taxes for them, telling them what to do. So the colonists fight for independence. They gain independence from the British government, a remarkable victory, whole other story, the Revolutionary War. And then the Americans have to create their own government. So they come up with something that they call the Articles of Confederation. This is an American government to govern America, our first government, right? So the Articles are now the government of the land.
I need some money. I'm the Articles of Confederation, and I'm weak. Do you have any money? Because I'm broke. I need to build a road and have an army. And
I'm not going to tell you. I'm not even going to listen to you.
Do you have anything?
I'm just going to ignore you. Go away. The Articles, basic problem, they're too weak. Right? They're too weak. So you see why the colonists did it. Then when they made their own government, they didn't want this mistake. They didn't want a government that was too strong. But the problem is they went in the opposite direction. They made a government that couldn't stand up for itself. A weak government, a dribbling government, a government with no executive branch, a government with no federal courts, on and on. A very weak national government. So then we get the Constitution, the subject of today's lesson. And the Constitution is, this is like the story of Goldilocks. Goldilocks visits the three bears, and she tries the porridge. And the first porridge is too hot. The second porridge is too cold. And the third porridge is just right. It's the same situation here. It takes the colonists 3 tries to get it right, but eventually they create a government that is neither too strong nor too weak, but just powerful enough, just the right balance.
Okay, so we were talking about the foundations of the American government. But I'd like to back up a little bit, Mr. Jones, and I want to back up a little bit and talk about why did the colonists want to come here. There are 3 major reasons that the colonists wanted to come here, why they wanted to come here. One, almost everybody knows this one, religious freedom. That's the more popular one. The king had no problem giving them religious freedom, but they also wanted economic, and they wanted political freedom. What do we mean by economic and political freedom? Well, the idea here is that the colonists are going to be able to open up their own businesses, make their own money, support themselves, and develop their own way of life. And in so doing, they would need a political system where they would be able to have a representative system of government where they would elect people to make laws for themselves and thereby put the 3 together. And in the end, I think most colonists, at least Ben Franklin, had the idea that we were going to make our own government, form our own country at some point. So those are the 3 major reasons why the colonists wanted to come here. But the king only was going to allow them to come for one reason. He didn't care necessarily about their religious freedom, but he definitely cared about these 2. He did not want the colonists at first to have economic or political freedom as the colonists defined it. The king wanted to allow them to come for one reason really, and that was to make money. And that leads to the first system of mercantilism. Mercantilism is the system where the British are going to use the colonies to make money so that the colonies can't trade with whoever they want. The British are going to come over, take the resources from the colonies, produce them, bring them back and sell them. Mr. Jones?
Mercantilism is kind of like the story of Cinderella. Right? The mother country is Britain. Britain's like the evil stepmother. Cinderella is like the colonies. She's just a colony, just a stepchild, controlled by the evil stepmother, the mother country Britain. Britain gets to make all the rules, and the whole idea of their relationship is that the stepmother tells Cinderella what to do to benefit the stepmother. The stepmother doesn't care about what's good for Cinderella. The stepmother only cares about what's good for her. She makes Cinderella work to help her, right? And it's the same situation with Britain, the mother country. Britain is making the 13 colonies work so that Britain benefits, so that Britain makes money. The colonies want the freedom, as Mr. Clark talked about, but Britain doesn't care about what's good for the colonies. Britain cares about money for Britain. The colonies are there to benefit Britain.
It's a good thing I didn't wear my glass slippers. I'll walk with that pen, right? Okay, so the British allow them to come to make money. Eventually, the British are going to get too busy fighting wars with the French, sometimes called the 100 Years' Wars, sometimes called Queen Anne's War, and that's going to distract them, where this gives the colonists the opportunity to practice all three of these things, and you know what? They like it. They're making tons of money, at least much more than they had before. Their economic system is thriving. They're gaining political power. They're basically at this point operating on their own. It's kind of like when the parents go away for the weekend and the kids have total reign of the house. Don't get any ideas, people. And you can stop the hate mail right now. We're just throwing out a nice little analogy, so don't come looking for them. So the colonies are operating just fine. But the French-Indian War occurs because the colonists, are overstepping the bounds, the borders that the British had set up for them, telling the colonists, the British did, don't step over these lines because you are going to run into the French and Indians, and they're going to fight. So that starts the French-Indian War. The British come back to help out. They see what the colonists have done, for the most part, and they say, we want to cut this. We want to start making more money. We want to get back involved in what's going on, and then that starts the period of strict mercantilism. And strict mercantilism is basically a rewrite of the original mercantilism, only now the military is there, if you want to think of it that way. Great thing to add into your essay for the Regents. The military is there now supervising, much more supervision, and the colonists are going to start to rebel against this, which inevitably, with all the different forms of rebellion over the Stamp Act, the tax, the sugars, the Sugar Act, all the different acts that the British Parliament is passing, the colonists will rebel for the most part against, which leads to the Revolutionary War. Very quickly, Revolutionary War, for your Regents, really only one thing to know other than the advantages and disadvantages that the colonists and British had, and that the colonists win and thereby form their own country. At that point, by the way, they're no longer called colonists, they're now Americans. But there's a key battle called the Saratoga Battle, Battle of Saratoga, and it will change basically the outcome of the Revolutionary War. Mr. Jones, you want to open on that?
Absolutely. These are the 13 colonies. Pretty solid.
I like them. I think they're cool.
Right here in the middle is a colony of New York, a very important colony. Down here you have New York City, very important trade center, right? So in the Revolutionary War, the British are going to try to take New York, okay? And Saratoga is right about here on the frontier. Saratoga is the turning point of the Revolutionary War. At Saratoga, the British strategy of conquering New York to divide the colonies in two fails. It fails because the Patriots strike a decisive victory right here at Saratoga. The victory at Saratoga convinces the French that the Patriots, the colonists, actually have a chance of defeating the British, and so therefore the French begin to give their full support to the colonists, which makes the victory in the Revolutionary War possible. Revolutionary War ends, now the colonists have to form their own government.
the Articles of Confederation. And as we had just discussed with Goldilocks, the Articles were too weak. The Articles of Confederation were too weak. And the question is, why? Why were the Articles too weak? Well, number one, the Articles have no system of money. They have no currency. They cannot tax. There is no military. Unless, no army or military, unless the colonies decide to get on board. But there will be no official military that's ready and disposable for defense. And the reason, by the way, that the framers of the country did this, they weren't stupid people, but they had just broken away from the British, which was too strong, and the military was used against them. So their answer is to go 180 degrees in a different direction by not having the military. So there's no system of money, there's no taxation, there's no military, there's no executive branch of government, so there's no president, there's no judiciary, so there are no courts. So you can see that the federal government is greatly weakened here. So then who has the power? The states. As Mr. Jones talked about with Goldilocks, we don't have a balance. We didn't have a balance when the federal government was run by the British, and now we don't have a balance when the federal government is being run by the Americans under the Articles of Confederation. So we're going to have to change that. It is noteworthy, though, to make sure that we mention that there is one major positive from the Articles of Confederation.
And that deals with the land west of the colonies. The Northwest Ordinance, let's see, we'll write it over here. The Northwest Ordinance is the one success of the Articles of Confederation. And the Northwest Ordinance creates a plan for the colonies, now states, to expand westward. And the basic idea here is that in the Northwest Ordinance, the 13 states, not colonies anymore, the 13 states say, we are going to expand westward by adding territories as states, as full equal members to our country. And they create a plan to expand westward.
Ben Franklin, way back before we even had a country, had written in his notes that someday he foresaw going from the east all the way over to the west. So the idea that the Revolutionary War was something that happened very quickly is wrong. It was a long, drawn-out process with a lot of steps leading up to that point. But there were many colonists who had their eyes on the entire landscape, the entire part of the continent.
But meanwhile, this success is the exception. The big key with the Articles is that they're too weak. They have all of these failures that Mr. Clark mentioned.
And one event in particular helped to show this, the weaknesses, and that was called Shays' Rebellion. Daniel Shays, farmer, was rebelling over an excise tax, and he rounded up a bunch of farmers to go raid the, what's it called with all the guns we get?
The armory?
The armory, yeah. But he was going to go raid that, and there was no federal army to put that down, so the federal government had to round up troops, and they were able to put the rebellion down, but it did show that, geez, what if a real army, a real trained military from another nation invaded? Would we be able to fight that attack off? And they had serious questions about whether or not they would.
But what if Britain came back? What if Britain tried to push us around again? Could we hold them off? And in fact, Britain had soldiers in the Western territories, and they were supplying weapons to the Indians who might use those weapons against us. And we've shown here in Shays' Rebellion that we can't really defend ourselves.
And that, by the way, leading up to this, the War of 1812, will help to stop that supplying of weapons to the Native Americans. That'll be part of the Treaty of Ghent, where they will, the Native Americans will no longer get supplies from the British, which allows the colonies, sorry, not the colonies anymore, the Americans, the newly won states, to go westward, or westward, depending on your perspective. Okay, Articles of Confederation. Do you think there's any more to add to that?
I think we're good.
Okay, let's head into the Constitution.